Hi, everybody. Welcome back to, or welcome for the first time to the CLAT podcast. We have a very special episode for you today, our third episode, which also happens to be a group episode. We have three people with us today who cracked the 2023 CLAT this December 2022, and will soon be going to National Law School of India University. And I look forward to welcoming them. I've already welcomed them, but I look forward to officially welcoming them to the NLS family. So we have Sana Singh, who got AIR 11 in this year's CLAT 2023. We have Ayesha Khan from Bangalore, who got AIR 17. And we have Aadithya Athreya, who got AIR 55. So just before we jump into their stories, this episode of the CLAT podcast is brought to you by Target Success. You get to learn more about Target Success at the end of this episode, but it's really more about Sana, Ayesha, and Aadithya. Let me introduce myself. My name is Janardhan Pashupati. I'll be your host for the CLAT podcast. I got ranked 38 in the CLAT 2013 back in the day. I too went to National Law School of India University, and I've had the privilege of mentoring hundreds of students, some of them who are here, through the CLAT cracking process. All right. So, Sana, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Right. So I'm Sana Singh. I'm from Pune. I started prepping for CLAT in 2021, but I wouldn't say I was very serious with it initially. Yeah, I'll be going to the National Law School, Bangalore this year. I also got an AILET rank of 27. Well, I also considered going to NLU Delhi, but then I ultimately circled back to NLS, which was my first choice.
Right. Welcome to the family. Congratulations once again on your rank, and welcome to the family.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Aisha. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, right. Yeah, I'm Ayesha. I was CLAT All India rank 17 and All India rank 4 in AILET. So yeah, similar to Sana, I've been preparing since 11th because I knew I wanted to do law for a while. But I kind of pulled up my prep again after my school exams kind of got over with because it was difficult to balance the two. So probably in like September, October is when I started rigorous prep for December. And yeah, it's been endless all the way for me. I did consider New Delhi, but of course, since I'm also from Bangalore, NLS was my first choice throughout. So that's where I'll be going. Yeah.
Right. And again, congratulations on your rank, and welcome to the NLS family. And
Thank you.
Aditya, yes, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Aadithya Athreya. I'm also from Bangalore. To be honest, I only decided I wanted to do CLAT last year in December. That was 2021 December was when I decided I wanted to do it. And I had the misfortune of spending 6 months in a coaching center that was for IP Mat. That falsely advertised to me. I'm very upset about that. But anyway, I finally got to I finally got to CL in April, and I began serious preparation in September for the exam.
All right, got it. So, very varied and interesting stories here that we have. So, I think one thing that all of you have touched upon, and this is a consistent pattern every year that I've seen it, and it's been a decade that I've seen it, that the same people who crack the CLAT crack the AILET, and so they face a difficult choice in front of them, which is NLU Delhi is doing very well for itself. My cousin went to NLU Delhi and is currently at Cambridge, pursuing his LLM. And NLU Delhi itself, infrastructurally and in many other academically, is really challenging the top NLUs for a spot in the top 3, the top 4. So, so every year, including my year, it was a tough decision for everybody. As often happens, most people who crack both, who cracked one crack the other, and most people end up going to NLS. And some people who were from Delhi or preferred Delhi end up going to Delhi. So what were your thought process? Because this may be a situation that many 11th class and 11th class students right now are thinking about, and will be a perennial problem for a lot of CLAT aspirants and AILET aspirants. So what were your thoughts on this, Sana, Ayesha, Aditya?
So I think for me personally, NLU Delhi, I was strongly considering because I was sort of worried about the whole academic rigor at NLS, and a lot of people hype it up so much that I was kind of concerned about whether or not I could handle it. Ultimately, though, I realized that, and I spoke to a senior who told me something that stuck with me, that if I decide to pick NLU Delhi, which was always a second choice and never my first choice, I will always have it, sort of as a thought in the back of my head that what if I'd picked NLS, because it still is ranked first everywhere, even if both the law schools are on par. So I'll always doubt that. But if I just go with NLS, I won't really think about what if I'd gone to NLU Delhi, except if I do badly on an exam or something. So, and also just Delhi as a city, I'm not too familiar with. And yeah, I had some concerns about that. So
Right. That is a valid concern. And it's what Jeff Bezos calls the regret minimization framework for decision making, which is that the reason he started Amazon was and leaving a really cushy job, to give that context, was that he didn't want to regret it 20 years down the line, or something along those lines. So that makes a lot of sense.
definitely.
I didn't. I mean, either was this a choice that you had to face, or what was going through your mind? As did you write AILET? I mean, I'm sorry, you didn't mention the AILET, so I just want to.
No, I did write AILET. The problem was the AILET exam went absolutely terrible for me.
Okay.
So a couple of things went really wrong there. One was I wasn't too familiar with the MCQ sheet. This might seem like a really small problem,
Absolutely.
but it wasn't something I realized until the end. Because of those damn circles and the fact that you can't use a pencil in the actual exam, I lost a huge chunk of marks there.
Right.
So
how many marks would you say? I mean, if you had to put
this is really sad because I could have gotten in, but I lost at least 7 questions. I marked them wrong.
Right.
Because I couldn't see the circle properly.
Oh my God.
So 7 plus the 1.75 for negative marking, I lost 8.75 marks.
Right.
Because I couldn't differentiate the circles properly there.
Right.
Because all our mocks, if you look at the mock sheets that we get, or that at least I got in my coaching center, you had them in groups of 5, the questions.
Yeah.
But in AILET, it was a continual question sheet. And for some reason, it seems very minuscule, but that completely threw me off. That plus the pattern gave me a pretty terrible AILET score, to be honest.
Right. No, absolutely. They did change around the pattern a lot, but there's a good lesson for anyone listening, is that it really is the small things, and there's nothing. It may seem really insignificant, but OMR mistakes are the first thing that you should really take care of, because they can cause a lot of pain in the long run and can really cost people opportunities in that context. So don't practice without OMR sheets if you're doing mocks, no matter how early in the process you are. Use OMR sheets, understand what situation you're going into. Aditya's story of the AILET actually reminds me of my own AILET, where I thought I should start with maths for whatever reason, and I ended up leaving 7 marks on the table of English comprehension, which I kept to the side for myself as a treat for the end, which I knew I would get. So I'm in an exactly similar boat, Aditya, where I lost 7 marks. I have no, I mean, I still got rank 41. I have no idea how, but and this time what they did with the pattern is, and what they're doing with the pattern moving forward, it's a very uphill climb for a lot of people. But going back to the main point, the small things matter a lot. There's nothing, it may seem insignificant, but make sure that you're practicing well with OMR sheets and understand how they work. Otherwise, it can end up costing you very dearly for decades to come. So, Ayesha, how did you go about that decision? Of course, being from Bangalore, that added one dimension to your decision.
Right, yeah. But I mean, I think from the beginning, NLS was always my first priority since it is ranked first. I'm also originally from Delhi, so it wasn't something which was closed off to me because of location. So I know a lot of people there. But I think for me, another thing was that while I was preparing for CLAT and AILET, I was actually expecting to get into NLU Delhi more than NLS, because I was better at AILET and I don't know, I enjoyed the paper pattern more. I mean, eventually the paper pattern turned out to be entirely different, so it didn't really count to anything, but I did prefer ALET. So, but for me, it was always a decision that if I somehow get into NLS, then it'll be NLS all the way through. So after I got into NLU Delhi and ALET results had come, I knew that I would give it up only for NLS. So it was a pretty easy decision for me. Again, like you said, I live here, plus a lot of people I know from like my coaching and my friends also got into NLS. So we were all always going there. So yeah, it wasn't too much of a decision. And I mean, again, about the OMR, even I did mess up like 3 questions in OMR in ALET because I had practiced OMR since the very beginning with all my mocks. And I don't think I'd ever messed up OMR before. But for some reason, on the actual main day, I messed up one of the OMRs. And thinking about that, I messed up 2 more. So because of that, that kind of threw me off a bit. But I mean, at the rate at which that new pattern was going, I was like, an OMR is not going to affect me as much as my already wrong answers. So that kind of pulled me through. But yeah, it was endless from the beginning for me, regardless.
Got it. There were a lot of there's a lot of detail in that I want to get into, but I do want to ask one question, which is that for a lot of students, so there are two schools of thought on this. One is that staying in the city that you're from for the comfort and the convenience of having your family close by and already being part of a network. And then there's another school of thought, which is that I want to get away from that comfort zone and go live in a new city or live a different or a different life in a sense, at least for some time. So was that something that you thought about, Aisha?
Again, both Delhi and Bangalore were pretty familiar to me since I've grown up in Delhi. But I am a person who likes my comfort zone. So I was pretty relieved by this fact. I was definitely more comfortable in Bangalore as well, since my parents are also here and stuff. But no, I was not. I mean, I do want that college experience, of course, of staying away. So there is no way I will consider still staying at home while going to NLS. But also, I like the comfort zone and safety of still being in Bangalore because I already know the places. And of course, my school friends are also a lot of them staying in Bangalore. But yeah, for me, it wasn't that much of a decision on the basis of that because I would still prefer to be around some place I know.
Got it. Got it. So, like I said, there was a lot to unpack in Aisha's answer. So I'm just going to take a minute to do that. And I think this speaks, what Aditya and Aisha spoke about really speaks to each of you did really, really well in the exam, right? I mean, you guys, you guys did really, really well in the exam. You got into the top ranked NLU. But at the same time, there was a gap between what your preparation prepared you for and what the actual exam day was like. And so would I be correct in saying that there was, that there was some real curveballs on the day like we've discussed? And so, could you elaborate on those, or, were there other curveballs, or what was that like? This is for anybody. Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm gonna be honest, the CLAT paper came pretty much exactly what I expected because we had AILET before CLAT, right?
Right.
So by then I was ready for anything because if they can mess up the pattern to this extent, the actual I was expecting something far worse. So by that logic, the CLAT pattern was very straightforward. I feel like the bigger problem, at least for me, in my situation, was the disturbances on the day of the exam. You seem to expect that everybody is going to be quiet and focused in an exam that can determine the rest of your life, possibly. Funnily enough, that wasn't the case because first off, our invigilator only let us start a little bit later than everybody else. And then on top of that, we had 3 people who were constantly arguing about whether they want the fan on or not. And all of those things, these minute factors just they were the only real curveballs I expected in the actual CLAT. AILET, the entire thing, as soon as I opened the booklet, was a curveball. So I honestly, I had given up on expecting anything after I saw the first set of questions.
Right. So I had the exact same experience with the AILET, which is that I feel so lucky that the AILET happened before the CLAT, because after the AILET happened, I had started taking my preparation much more seriously and preparing for the worst case scenario, as Aditya has Aditya alluded to. So in that context, then was that a motivating factor or a demotivating factor, as because for a lot of people, seeing the AILET, especially this year, became a demotivating factor, that they're not in a position to do well in these competitive examinations. So was that a motivating factor or demotivating factor?
Okay, so I agree with everything Aditya said. I'm just glad that AILET was the first exam we gave, because it was also pretty much the only mock, I would say, I'd written in person. So
Right.
I'd prepared online the entire time.
Right.
And AILET being my first exam experience in person it was just daunting. And when I opened the booklet, it threw me off. I also ended up messing up like 4 OMRs, and I didn't really have hope for it. Like, I think the 5-6 days we had between AILET and CLAT, I didn't really do much for CLAT. I sort of just let myself relax, and I was just mentally preparing myself to go in on the day of CLAT and just calm myself down, because I think for AILET I lost my composure a little bit, and that's pretty much the only way I thought, at least at the time of attempting the exam, that it could have gone better for me. So I would say AILET was a demotivating factor for me initially, is what I thought. But I also just took it as, okay, it's fine. Now the worst has happened, and anything after this I probably can face.
Right.
So yeah.
Keep that idea close to you, because you'll need it for law school. But yeah, no, but you're absolutely right. So I think we've hit upon a very important vein of conversation, which is that mental preparation. So we've talked about it a little bit, but I'd love to dig into that week, especially, or the night before, or even the last. For Aditya's case, he started preparing from September. Sana, Ayesha, you guys have been preparing for a much longer time. So I'd love to get into the specifics of your preparation, of course, but what was the mental preparation like, and what was the mental situation like on the day of the exam, the night before, during the exam, things like that? Yeah. So Sana, if you could elaborate a little bit on that. Yeah.
Right. So the night before AILET, I think I was definitely panicking a lot more than before CLAT, because I didn't really know what to expect. I hadn't seen my center before and all of those things. I had a lot of little worries, like the invigilator and how quiet the classroom is going to be and things like that. And then AILET, I go to my center, everything is very well organized. People are quiet, but the benches are so uncomfortable that I'm basically standing for the entire duration of the exam.
Wow.
And so I come back out, I'm just like red faced, and I tell my mother, okay, NLU Delhi is probably not happening. We go back home, and I just talk to my friends and I try to calm myself down, because AILET was a paper that, even if you ask someone who ended up getting like a top 10 rank, they would tell you that it went badly for them. I don't think anyone while attempting the exam thought that it was going well until they got to maybe GK. So then and then before CLAT, I think I told myself not to make the same mistake of letting myself get a little too lost in what might happen on the day of the exam. So I just read, and it was like a very normal night. I think I went to bed at 2 a.m. I was watching a movie and I was talking to my friends, and I decided to wake up a little later than I usually would, because I wanted to be fresher in the afternoon. And before I wrote CLAT, so I was one of the only people in my exam center who didn't have their phone with them. So I just handed my phone over to my mother. And I was sitting there for 1.5 hours under the shade of a tree, just zoning out completely. I had nothing on me. I had no books. So I had a lot of time to sit with my thoughts.
Yeah.
And how CLAT went for me. So I was just very zen mode. I think for AILET, I was trying to be a little hype, like, let's do
Right.
this, let's get this done.
Right.
Also for AILET, one thing I did, which I'm not sure if I would recommend, is I didn't wear a wristwatch.
Right.
So I thought that because it's a 1.5-hour exam, maybe looking at the time would freak me out more.
Right.
So I just chose not to, but I did it for CLAT, and honestly, both of them
Yeah.
were, I mean, it depends on what works for you, but I would say maybe practice with a wristwatch because your exam center might not have a wall clock.
Right. You know, like that's very good advice. Very good practical advice. Please carry a wristwatch. But
Yes.
if you're okay with it, Sana, I'd like to just, if you're okay with it, I'd like to dig a little deeper
Mhm.
because that's very interesting. That 1.5 hours, in total, in a sense, almost, silence in a sense. So what
Mhm.
was, and really sitting with your thoughts, which can be, especially before such a monumental, event in your life that you've really put so much time into, it can be daunting.
Right.
There can be a lot of things like racing thoughts, all kinds of stuff. So what
Mhm.
was that? So what was that like for you?
So I think I was just trying to visualize the time after the exam when I would just get out and the way I would feel and how it would feel like to get into NLS or, any other top law school, what I would say to my friends. And it wasn't really about what will happen in the exam hall as much as it was about what will happen after. I was sort of just, I think once CLAT ended, I was just a little bit relieved. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. And in the weeks to follow, I realized that I sort of missed, prepping for CLAT and all of that. But on the day itself, it just felt like I just felt very nice to be done with it for once.
Right.
Yeah.
Any particular thought that I mean, so that's really interesting. But like I said, 1.5 hours is a really long time. Any particular thought or thoughts that you remember specifically from that time?
Mm. Uh, After CLAT or like right before?
Right before, because that's a
Right,
very
right.
crucial period for that's. I think
Mm-hmm.
I think in a sense that time makes or breaks it almost in many
Definitely.
ways. Yeah.
Definitely. So I
So
think
yeah.
one thing I kept telling myself is that, you have the fortitude to get through this. You've gotten through 1.5 years of prep, and that's no easy feat. So it's like these 2 hours is everything that matters. Like your mock score doesn't define, and like it doesn't say anything about you. There is a person who could have, been getting, and I know people like that who will be
Yeah.
coming to NLS with me this year who had mock scores much better than mine, much worse than mine, and yet we're all headed to the same law school. So those things just don't define you, and it's very bad to like take that baggage with you that, oh, I haven't covered this much GK and I don't know what will happen. So I just told myself these 2 hours, that's it, focus, and that's it. It's make or break. Everything you did in the past 1.5 years just boils down to this, and everything you didn't do, I mean, just don't fret about it because there's nothing you can change right now.
Right. So that's a lot of pressure also. And I think you're exactly right on two things. Don't define yourself by your mock score. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, it has nothing whatsoever. It has like a very limited reflection on how you're going to do in the actual exam. And as I tell every student every time, I'll, you guys know this now, and I hope you tell every student you come across who's preparing for the CLAT, which is that what happens before and what happens after doesn't matter. What matters is what happens in those 2 hours. That's it. You only have that afternoon, those 120 minutes. What happened in the like after that, you have a whole life to build. But what happens before that has nothing whatsoever to do with what will happen in those 2 hours. It's a constant refrain of people who are in the top 10 ranks in the mocks who just don't end up cracking the exam. And it befuddles us as teachers, but I mean, not me anymore, because it doesn't matter. What matters is what happens in those 2 hours. But that can be a really pressurized situation to put yourself in as well. So Ayesha, Aditya, did you feel something similar, Ayesha? What was Did you feel something similar, or what was your experience there?
Yeah, I mean, some things were similar. I'd say for me, again, I think both before CLAT and AILET, I wasn't nervous. I was quite nervous before, I'd say, when I was still giving mocks and stuff. But I think last 2, 3 days, I didn't give any mocks. Um, and apart from that, I also, before AILET, now this is not something I repeated for CLAT, and I don't know how good of an idea it was, but since the center was like 2 hours away, it was in NLS.
Yeah.
And it was like early morning. So, and I hate waking up early. So we decided to stay over at a hotel overnight. So like basically the entire last day I didn't study. And for some reason they were hosting some sort of weddings or baby shower at that hotel that night. So there was music playing the entire night. But I still knocked out at like 9:30 p.m. I think because I just enjoy sleeping a lot. So I slept at like 9:30 and then I woke up at like 8:30. But it was, I mean, AILET, again, I don't think I was very nervous. And another thing I did for both CLAT and AILET is that I had prepared playlists from
Right.
before. So,
Yes.
yeah, I think you had mentioned that in like the one class I'd gone to, and I
Sure.
remember that, and I made playlists. So that was very different from Sana's because I would not say I was relaxed before either of them. I was very hyped up. I
Right.
think I was pretty excited to like Sana said, get the exam over with.
Right.
So even after AILET, even for CLAT, I
Right.
think for CLAT, we reached like 3.5 hours early to the center.
Mhm.
So I don't know why. Again, my parents were just paranoid about us for some reason, the car breaking down in the middle and absolutely everything wrong happening in those few hours. But we did reach 3.5 hours early when no one else had showed up. So we kind of had our own little picnic in Ambedkar Institute of Technology, which was my center. Because my brother was there, my family was there. So it was like I wasn't really thinking of the exam right before, and before that, like I had headphones in. So even in AILET, a lot of my friends were in the same center as me, but I wasn't like talking to anyone because I had my headphones on the entire time. So people were like still studying and like discussing GK and stuff. But I mean, GK was never my strong point either, but I knew that there's nothing I can learn now, which I didn't learn in 2 years. So I think the entire time I had headphones on and I wasn't nervous for either of them. Like Sana said, when I gave AILET, I definitely thought that NLU Delhi was like gone for me, which is ironic after the results. But when I did give it, it felt like it hadn't gone well, especially because it was so unexpected. So I think that kind of it had motivation and demotivation because I was motivated to do better for NLS because again I wasn't aiming for NLS, I was aiming for anything till Jodhpur, Gandhinagar because I
Right.
would have taken
Right.
all of them.
Right.
So that's why I don't think I put a lot of pressure on myself because I was like I knew how my mock scores were going, but that again, like Sana said, that wouldn't determine anything. But I was just aiming not to look at the people around me just because I was in a very big center for CLAT. So there were a lot of people, but I was like, I just have to reach that cutoff. If I'm going to get into Jodhpur or something, even 95, 96,
Correct.
that's all I need to reach in a mock, just like anything else, which doesn't seem as hard or pressurizing when you think about it this way. So I think that helped because my thoughts before CLAT weren't really like pressurizing myself as much as it's not going to be that hard. So again, like a pretty arrogant mindset because I'd seen that in a lot of topper interviews.
Right. So